welcome to our spoiler cast. Welcome to our Universe Extended episode number 7, covering the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 3 show on Disney+. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I'm Christopher Tanner, and I'm about to bring my co-host in to have a conversation with you about all of the unique craziness that went down in episode 3. If you have never heard of us before, we are Planning Phase Syndicate, and we are doing a spoiler cast after our normal X-Wing, Star Wars X-Wing episode that we do every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you've never heard of us before and you want to check us out, you're welcome to join us live every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. With that being said, let me bring my co-host in for this spoiler cast, Mr. JJ, the amazing No Giants hat tonight. Gideon, how are you tonight, sir?
Yeah, I think I left it in the car. That's why.
I'm excited. I hate that hat, and I think you should never wear it again.
How
are you tonight, sir?
Though. I'm doing all right. I'm excited to go over this episode. There was so much that happened in this episode. It was so great.
It was. And that's the funny thing is we're sitting here and it's like, oh, I can't believe we had to wait till Sunday night to have this conversation. I watched this show on Wednesday night and then again on Thursday afternoon on my lunch hour. And then again with my other son on Friday afternoon. And I am insanely excited about this show. Now, there's been a lot of weirdly somewhat negative press for the show. Like, people are kind of like, I don't know if we should watch it. I don't think this is a good show. And I'm super confused by that, JJ. Because to me, even though I will say there can be a little bit of lack of emotion in some of the characters, like, to me, the majority of the cast is very well-rounded. And this is a deeply moving show. And maybe it's because we're in our late 30s. We kind of grew up with Star Wars, right? Obi-Wan has always been this like I don't know, like this mysterious guy that kind of goes, I'm really old and I'm going to train you, Luke. And now we're finally are getting to see him kind of be that middle-aged, bitter Jedi that's like, man, I can't believe I failed that bad. And now I have to pick myself up from my failure. And that's how we get the Star Wars trilogy. Like, without him, we don't have 4, 5, and 6. We just don't have them. They don't exist.
Yep.
Like, wouldn't it be like I don't know. And maybe it's like, if we didn't have them, would it be crazy because, like, would Vader and Palp still be in power? Is Luke and Leia the only saviors of the world? I don't know.
So yeah, I think in Star Wars fans in general, we're very, very loud when it comes to our opinions about, like the entire canon and universe in general, right? However, I have to ignore a lot of those comments, mainly because it is still way, way, way too soon to make a proper, educated argument about any aspects of whether you don't agree with certain characters or certain decisions that they made with certain characters, because we don't know the resolution of their story. And a lot of things make sense in after everything's been revealed for that particular character in retrospect, right? Like, we get to see the entirety of their trajectory for their role and how they acted in this particular series. So it's really easy to be discouraged when you read those type of comments and stuff like that about the show, when I personally don't agree with them at all. I think that this has been a really, really good show, considering the history of the characters that are involved in it. As a person who has seen all the additional like shows and stuff like that for these characters, just seeing Obi-Wan's development throughout the Clone Wars, seeing Reva's character in Jedi Fallen Order, seeing Anakin's development in Clone Wars and going into Vader and things that he's done as Vader, going into the books with like Thrawn and seeing how he develops in there, just having that reference for why the character acts a particular certain way inside of this particular series is great. But of course, not everybody's going to go as deep as I would to read those extra additional stories that they provided for those characters to give them more depth. And without that reference, it's very easy to misjudge the characters as they are currently in this point in time in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that's interesting because like I said, a lot of people just kind of focus on this, like they're like, why are we continuing this discussion? And so, spoiler alert, there we go. I said it. If you have not seen episode 3, stop watching right now. Unless you want spoilers, then continue to watch because we love people watching their show.
Oh, yeah.
All right, spoiler done. And I think this is important. We get to see Obi-Wan get burned by Vader. Like Vader basically says, I got you. I want to burn you. I want to make you suffer in the same vein that you made me suffer. Because Vader still sees this as, it's still like a child. Which a lot of people are going to argue that that piece of it is actually incorrect. Because when we look at the later trilogy, we don't see Vader acting like a child per se. Other than he randomly chokes people, which is very childlike, I think, in my opinion. I mean, just me.
Yeah.
Like, if I think if my kid would get pissed at me and could choke me, like I think my kid would do that, right? Like I think my kid would just like I asked my daughter to take like our dog has an injured leg right now, and they have to take him out on a leash. And every time I ask my daughter to do it, she hates it because that dog is bigger than her and pulls her, and I get the dirtiest look every time, and I just think, if she were like Kylo Ren a little bit more, I might not be alive today. She would probably choke me.
Does she like reach out her hand to try to force choke you? Pretend? Right.
No, that's a Stranger Things. That's a Stranger Things reference there, and then we're not gonna. We can't do a Stranger Things spoiler cast. Though that might be fun to do because I really like that show. But no, she does not because my kids don't think Star Wars is imperative, but I keep trying to explain to them if they did those things, maybe they would get away with a little bit more because, it would be like, oh, you were pretending to choke me. All right, I'll just let that pass. Like, really, I shouldn't because that's pretty awful,
That'd be great if you actually went along with it too, like mid-sentence. Like,
all right, hopefully my kids do not watch this show. Because I don't need to contend with that right now. But okay, going back to the Vader thing, like, so we're seeing character development to some extent, like, and in the later trilogy, we don't see Vader with 1,000,000 pounds of emotion. Like, we see a little bit where he gets angry, but even when he's angry, he's very reserved. And like you said, I read all the books to some extent. Like, I haven't read every single canon and every single legacy book, not every single one of them, but I've read a lot of them, like a lot of books.
Mm-hmm. And
you see different sides of Vader that you don't see specifically until now, and we're getting some of that now, and we're getting some of this action piece. And I've argued that I would like them to tell a new story, but I'll be honest, them not telling a new story and giving us this little interlude into what Obi-Wan has done with his life in between then has been the biggest treat to me. Even over, I will say this, over The Mandalorian. And I love my little Grogu dude, a lot. And I love I don't love Mando as much as I love Grogu. I don't think. I think, and I don't love them all as much as I love Ahsoka, because I think Ahsoka is. I hope Ahsoka is the best show we've ever seen, because Rebels hit by far. Ahsoka at the end of Clone Wars and Rebels, those are two of my favorite little pieces. And unfortunately, Charles is not here to defend himself, but like I would tell Charles, if you ever watch this, Charles, shame on you for not being able to get over the animation. At least just let the audio play, because it is just so good. Just French kiss right there. Chef's kiss,
it really
not French kiss.
By far, yeah. So, let's start from the beginning first, right? Like we'll walk through the episode here first. So we have, Obi-Wan realizing that that Anakin is still alive. He's kind of traumatized by it, and just him interacting with Leia as they get off the planet and they walk towards the that tractor that takes them through the Imperial thing. I did like that interaction with them and the stormtroopers that got onto the tractor with him. They're like, "Yeah, we're looking for some Jedi, and have you guys seen them?" And I'm like, did you guys not look at the poster or the holocron that you guys could probably pull up at any time and see? Yeah, it's probably this guy right here. That was
because he looks
great.
the same. Like he looks.
And then Obi-Wan messing up and calling her Leia, and then he's like, "Yeah, I forget sometimes. You know, she looks just like her mother." And then just having that, him trying to like make up for it, but at the same time adding that hint of truth that he's speaking, and Leia's picking up on it and like trying to like get what does he mean by it, and I just love that dynamic of like Obi-Wan not wanting to tell so much but also like covering for his mistake and stuff. That was really, really good. I really enjoyed that interaction between Leia and Obi-Wan. That was just fantastic. That was one of the highlights of the show for like the non-action sequences. And then finally getting over to the security checkpoint where all of a sudden Obi-Wan learns how to shoot and he becomes a sharpshooter. That was really interesting. Just seeing them like, get through that checkpoint, get through all those stormtroopers and finally into the town where they're trying to smuggle it out. And I think at this point of the episode, this is where they really did a lot of connecting to either future projects that could be coming out down the line for the future of Star Wars, or at least other side events for it. Because they when they reach the underground tunnel, they have a list of names of people that had gone through that particular tunnel. And in there, we see Kinlan Voss, which is mentioned specifically by name. Which, if you guys have read Dark Disciple, a fantastic book. He was also in the Clone Wars series as well. His force ability to touch an object and see the history of everything is probably one of the most interesting uses of the force that they've ever written. And I hope that we get to see him either later on in Obi-Wan or at least on a separate show. I think that would be something good to explore.
Yep. So I'm going to stop you right there because that is one of my absolute favorite books. Like, just so you know, like I don't like, spoiler alert, I don't like what happens to Asajj at all. I hate that piece of it. I disagree with that, and I would love for them to rewrite that piece. But that's just me being selfish. Like, that's Chris being a selfish Star Wars, fan. But the oh my god, like that book hands down is probably one of the top 5 books I've read. I like that better than I like Aftermath's books.
Yeah.
Like I really like I like Aftermath, but that book, that the Dark Disciple, like just the way it's written and the way it's presented, the backstory we get for Asajj, how we get some of the interaction with what her deal with Dooku is just like off the charts great. And I think, the funny thing is we if we get to see this, right? Because if we take that timeline, JJ, right? And that timeline says that Dooku's still alive, and we know that he dies at the hands of some specific Jedi that turns into a Dark Lord later. And here we are, I'm guessing what that's 20 years later. Is that what it is? 15 years? 15-ish?
Yeah, about 15 years,
15, I would say, 15 to 20 years later, we're seeing his name show up as somebody that got to live and move on. That's huge, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's big. And some of what I hope is that we see some of these fallen Jedi rally around somebody like an Ahsoka, right? Because Ahsoka has always been the antithesis of a Jedi, right? She's a Jedi, but she's kind of saying, fuck the system. I guess we're going to open up the tags. Screw the system, right? Screw it. Screw it to hell. I don't want no part of this little cultish type thing that the Jedi are. And everybody thinks of these Jedi and everybody loves Jedi. But if you actually dig into some of the mythology and some of like the older stories, like you can see where the Jedi have issues, right? Like they do genuinely have issues. And when we talk, and it's funny, there's somebody, I've had this argument before where people will basically say, well, if you look at the Empire, technically the Empire is the anarchists here bringing, new strategy and diffusing a broken republic. And like, I will say, like hands down, I feel that the Republic was broken. Not just because of Palpatine, but because large republics genuinely are broken pieces. And when you don't have a large socialized system to help maintain everything, and now I'm getting political, I guess, but when you don't have some of this, like it starts to kind of fade. And, like that original rebellion against the normative values just makes things so much more logical when you apply them to today's standard. But then you have somebody like Voss, right? Like um um and you have somebody like Ahsoka who can turn around and say, "Here I am. I disagree with the Jedi, but I still want to do good. That's what my goal is. My goal
Yeah.
is to create this." And it would be amazing if we saw Dark Disciple kind of transition into Ahsoka maybe leading a small Jedi outlier sect to go after, the Empire that we just never have seen before. And how does that translate into when we get into Resistance and some of these other things, right? Because
Yeah.
if you can establish a genuine republic that cares for people and isn't manipulating or consuming them or ruining them, they can be a good force. Leia was never wrong in her original statements, right? In her original desire, she was never wrong. It's just, how do we get there without creating a corruption that is, a corruption, which is what turns into the Empire,
Yep.
which is what we
Exactly.
get with the Empire,
So, after they go into that small village where they're trying to escape, we were looking at the wall names and stuff like that. One of the names that you can see clearly is Valen Halcyon, who is Corran Horn's father. And we also earlier in that shot, we also see a little boy as well with her mother, which would potentially be Corran Horn's mother and Corran Horn himself as a child. And since we do know that there's a Rogue Squadron movie coming up in the end of 2023, if I'm not mistaken, or actually no, I'm sorry, they don't have a date for it as of yet. But with Rogue Squadron coming out, I'm hoping that we get to see a grown-up Corran Horn as a pilot in Rogue Squadron for post Rebellion era like flying. That would be absolutely amazing if they're setting this pilot up for a really good story for later on for Rogue Squadron. That would be fantastic. So anyway, moving forward, we see that the Empire tracks them down to that particular area, and now we see Vader come in to go hunt down Obi-Wan, and they start basically torturing and start killing people there in the village until they draw Obi-Wan out, and then finally we get the confrontation that we've been waiting for, seeing Obi-Wan, seeing Vader for the first time, and just seeing the horror in Obi-Wan's face to see what Anakin has become into like this monster. Just really great acting from Ewan McGregor. I really enjoyed that particular sequence because he's completely caught off guard by this monster that used to be his friend that he cared for so much. And even though you can't really see the facial expression of Vader, just in his action of, because normally in every other source of media, Vader just goes for the kill, right? He goes in, he starts massacring everybody as possible. But in this, he's a lot more slower and a lot more deliberate in trying to torture Obi-Wan. Like we were talking about before, setting up the fire and then just dragging him to it so that way he can suffer the same way that Obi-Wan made him suffer through the lava and stuff like that. Although, side note to that, Obi-Wan's hair is completely covered in the Force because not a bit of his hair burned. And all of that. At first, I was like, okay, he's going to be there in a few seconds and he'll get out. No, he's in there for like a good minute or two. I'm like, okay, at this point, his head should have caught on fire.
like his
and
head,
then he comes
his
out
robe.
and he's still combed. He's like, oh, I'm burned, but my hair is fine.
Oh no, I can't use this arm very well anymore, which we'll fix somehow because it never shows up in episode 4. I can't. Yeah.
And then Vader lets him go. He intentionally let him go because he still wanted Obi-Wan to suffer. And I think that's the part that, because at some point, and I am venturing here to guess, like I'm probably projecting this, but I felt that there's a part of Vader at that point there's still good in him where he didn't want to kill Obi-Wan. And that's why he let him go, because he's clearly sees Obi-Wan being dragged out and being taken by that droid. And he doesn't stop the droid. He doesn't order the stormtroopers to go after it because the stormtroopers can't see anything that's going on. He's the only one with advantage to it, and he stares at Obi-Wan being dragged out. And I still think that there's that part of him, that good part of Anakin that's still in there, that let Obi-Wan get away.
Because he knows. Okay, is it because he knows what he's done is wrong, or is it because he feels that he can't get the the kill the same way he wants to. Therefore, he's letting it go so he could. I don't know. Okay, we're gonna bring this to a Joker Batman thing.
Okay.
And I apologize because it's not Marvel, but I grew up fucking
Yeah.
DC over Marvel 90% of the time, minus Spider-Man. And if you look at it, Batman, they even confront this in the comic books.
Dark Knight.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they confront it there too, but in the comic books, they confronted this multiple times. Why does Batman not just kill Joker? Like, it's a simple, he's a vigilante anyway. Like, who gives a shit? You're killing a piece of shit psychopath. Like, who cares? Like, who genuinely cares? Like, is anybody gonna mourn Joker? Like, if you're a billionaire, can you just get away with things and run away? Like, your weird moral compass of not wanting to murder the Joker to stop and say, like, one death could save thousands of lives, Batman. But instead, you'd rather be stuck in this cycle of I gotta save you. It's a savior complex. I'm sure there's an actual like fallacy for this that Batman falls into. But does Vader fall into this just maybe on the reverse side, right? You know, like Obi-Wan left Anakin because he genuinely figured he was dead. He's like, oh, you don't have arms anymore? You're on fire? Like, okay, I'm just gonna leave you because, like, really, in fairness, I don't actually want to kill you, and you look pretty much like a Gondor. Like, there's no way you can live through this. Like, logically speaking, and that's because nobody knew Maul still. Like, I don't think Obi-Wan at the time knew Maul still existed.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know that your hate can sustain you for everything. Like, it keep you alive forever, which is insanely crazy too. But but again, like, and then that's almost what this feels like. And Obi-Wan's now going through this shock of not understanding why Anakin's alive. He's like, why are you here? Like, how did you get, you should be dead. Like, logically, you should be dead. Like, this is insane to me. And maybe that's why in Rebels, spoiler alert, but maybe in Rebels, when he sees Maul, he's not really that surprised. It's like, I saw Anakin come back for the
That's
dead.
true.
like, for fuck's sake. I mean, he was burning on fire when I left him, and yeah, you were cut in half, but hey, I don't know, miracles happen, baby. You know, Satan performs miracles in weird ways.
Yeah, and I was actually because one of the parts that they were contrasting too, right, is that Anakin was or not Anakin, Obi-Wan was feeling, you know, so troubled by this events that he's still trying to commune with Qui-Gon Jinn, and I'm waiting for Liam Neeson to appear as a Force Ghost. I swear.
I'm
was
sick
hoping,
of that though. Fuck Force Ghosts. I'm so sick of Force Ghosts.
I
get your point, but
or at least his voice, not even a ghost, right? Just his voice, right? To like kind of like talk him through, and because he's obviously not like he's not prepared at this at all, right? Because he's obviously had a disconnect from the Force at this point, which is why he's more reliant on blasters and everything more than using the Force. And it was obvious that when he was fighting with Vader, his lightsaber skills were just not up to par for what they used to be, versus Vader, who now has the backing of the full force of hate with his lightsaber, and he was just outclassed. And you know, I just want to see more development on that side of how Obi-Wan got to where he is now, where he's a shell of what he used to be, to the person who took down Maul in 3 strikes. Yeah. In three things, right? Like, to get to that point. And I'm anticipating that gap, you know, like that bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think that's I get that, and I think that's an extremely important point, because I think here is where we see Vader as an immature but extremely powerful user, right? And I think that's where the danger. So like where Pelp saw the ability for ability for Vader to be this who he is, right? And I think Pelp sees this. I have a extremely strong Force user that's better than me, period, hands down. Like, more strong, more willing, able to do it, but not able to understand that whole rule of 2 thing where Vader could kill off Pelp. But here's a special note, and this is like a book thing, but if you think about it, if you think every Sith is almost always training an apprentice once they hit a certain level, right?
Yeah.
And he had an apprentice in Clone Wars, and she did not follow him. And I don't think he thinks he's going to ever get her. Ever.
Wait, who are we talking about here?
Ahsoka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like Ahsoka, like at this point, I know he doesn't know Ahsoka's alive. We know that. Well, you and I know she's alive because we've seen other things, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know that she's alive, except for if you go back to the Ahsoka book, which I can't remember if it's canon or not.
It is canon.
Okay. So you go back to the Ahsoka book, and there is like a feeling during that book where he feels her. Now, I don't know where that book fits in this. I'd have to actually go do that research.
It's before the events of Obi-Wan.
Okay. So
but
he has
it, but it's not confirmed that he knows for certain that
it's not.
Yeah.
But the book alludes
to
that he senses his old Padawan. But I think he knows she's not going to come back to him. Like, it's not a thing where he's, going to actually do it, because they address a little bit of that in Clone Wars, right? Like that is a thing that comes up in, is it Rebels? Does it come up in both? God, I can't remember anymore. No, it does come up in Rebels too, doesn't it? In both of them. Yeah. I think it comes up in both of them. But in Rebels it comes up where they kind of they meet, right? And it's a whole thing. And the temple. And that's a whole thing that comes about. God, all of this like mixes together, which is just weird because that's where Maul reappears again too. But anyway, now I'm digressing. So I think he knows or senses that she's not coming back, because I think he senses that she would have came and found him if she wanted to join the dark side or wanted to join his side. And he knows that deep down. And so he could be, long story short, he could be secretly training Reva as a Sith apprentice, so that when he kills Palp, he takes over Palp. He's a child mentality, right? He's very immature in his thinking of things. He could be working towards training somebody to take over for him when he takes does the whole rule of two thing and kills Palp.
So here's the thing, because I thought about that too, about him taking another apprentice, but the Inquisitors are never considered actual Sith. They're just that. They're just the title of Inquisitors, people who can use the Force, who are aligned with.
But you know why though, right? Because it allows him to skirt the rule of two.
Exactly.
That's all it's doing. But that doesn't mean Vader wants to.
Okay, fair. But it does seem like they report directly to Vader, right? Both the Grand Inquisitor and all the other Inquisitors, they report to Vader.
Yes. Hence why when we see the scenes where Reva's like very emphatically insistent she wants Vader's favor, and she's been called out. It's like Fifth Brother calls her ass out how many fucking times?
Yeah, he does.
He's no, I understand what you're doing. No, I don't think you do, bro, but maybe you do. But it feels a little bit more like, that's why I feel the rule of two thing comes into effect here. And to me, even if they don't really use a lot of it, but it's a good nod, right? It's a good it's a good way of bringing that piece home, because you have to think, if she knows who Vader is, and that's a violation of a lot of what we know about canon, Vader keeps it a secret and kills people who know, but it's not like the end all be all thing, right? Like it's not like the biggest secret. It's not like Palpatine and being the Emperor versus a senator, right? Like that was pretty secretive. And in the books, in a lot of the books, Palp will do whatever it takes to maintain that secrecy from everyone, except for weirdly during Revenge of the Sith being on it. But during every other real book, he's very stoic about this.
Yeah.
And Vader could be the same way, but training Reva because he wants to overthrow Palp, because maybe he doesn't agree with exactly how things have been ran.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, I think that just my prediction for like the next episodes. Grand Inquisitor pays a visit to Boba Fett for cybernetic injections.
I hope
and,
not. Why
and
Boba
and
Fett?
and back to Beth, so that way he can recover, and then he goes and kills Reva. It'd be great.
All right, so I'll agree with you that I think he kills Reva, but I don't think that he gets the Bacta from.
No. That's
Boba
way
Fett.
ahead of time. Yeah, exactly. It's just to poke fun at Boba.
It is. All right, as we wrap up, I want to go really quickly back to that Jedi Wall. And I say this because I feel that was the pivotal piece of this whole show.
Yes.
And I don't care as much because in reality, what it's doing is giving us a little bit of a look at the underground railroad that we have in Star Wars. Unsub. Thanks, Deslin. I hope you subscribe to us and then give us an extra Patreon. But no, I want to go back to the wall because I read this article because after you brought up Quinlan Voss and the Corehorn thing, I went and looked up. There is an article that actually talks about 2 other names that show up in here.
Oh yeah.
One of them is Roganda, who I did not know who the hell this was. But Roganda, I guess, is from Legends and was a concubine of Palpatine's. And her name is on the wall.
Could she be Rey's mom?
That's a good point. Yes, actually. And that's what churns this whole... That's what churns my dials, I guess, here.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about that in there, but they do talk about... Because essentially she becomes... the answer is no, probably. Because she ends up turning to the Sith, right? Like, she essentially churns to the dark side. She's not a good person in the long run. But the discussion piece here, right, is because her inclusion could alter some of that Legends piece, right? And she could become part of canon. And there you go. Like, they could use that to lead to Rey in some way. That could be a way they lead to Rey. But if you think about it, her name being in there, she would have to turn back to Palpatine, get pregnant later on. I mean, that's the probability of that it's really low.
She could have been the person who gets together with his genetically cloned son, and then give birth to Rey.
You go.
That's how I was going to go. But yeah.
Okay, so that is 100% a probability. The other name that's on that wall is somebody called Djinn Atlas, right? And I've never heard of this character.
Yeah.
But essentially, well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, no, I haven't either. Yeah.
Essentially, this Jedi shows up with Ahsoka later on because he creates a sect of Jedi that reject the Jedi Council, right? Yeah. It's when we go all the way back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the show with Ahsoka, and why I like Ahsoka the most out of all of this is because this Jedi has actually worked with Ahsoka and Rex and Skywalker, right? And he has a Jedi that follows him called I don't know, something Kali Ming or something like that. I don't know. Okay. This is all a little bit more fuzzy because it's back from Wednesday when I looked this shit up. But something named Ming, and essentially in some sort of the books, that person appears as a love interest for Luke. Again, this is not canon stuff. But this person appears, and there could be discussions like this could be a leading into Ahsoka, right? Where I talk about Ahsoka being this antithesis of what Jedi should be and what they are, creating this other sect, or sponsoring this other sect of a lost Jedi. It's crazy, right? Because Ahsoka does genuinely want to follow the tenets that she grew up with. She just doesn't believe in the council, and she doesn't believe in the strict ways of how things go. And all I'm saying is these two names, as obscure as they are, if Disney actually does something with them, would mean they're giving a bigger nod to some of the canon and some of the other things that we've never seen before. And again, yes, I know I'm just, becoming that Star Wars guy that's like having crazy conversations about things that we probably will never see because
Like
Disney's
that meme?
not that smart. Huh?
Like the meme,
Yeah.
explaining like really obscure facts.
Yes,
Like
that's
that.
me. I don't know. And that's only because those are the things like when I pick out and look at those things, like I messaged you and I was like, what the hell is going on with this? And why would he not do this? It's the same reason. It's because there's a desire to see some of these weird, obscure things come to light. Because again, I get excited when the books present things we don't get in the other medias.
Yeah.
And I hope Star Wars doesn't do the Game of Thrones thing where they, just kind of shit all over the series with the last 2 seasons where they could have been a million times better. And I know Star Wars has shot shadow over some people's dreams, but I don't think the last 2 movies are as bad as people make them out to be. And I know
Could have been
that's
better, but they aren't as bad as people might make them out to be.
Yeah.
Agree.
Anyway. Final words, episode 3, before we sign off for the night. It's been a long night. I think we've been casting for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Loving the series so far. I can't wait to see where they take this to. There's supposedly unconfirmed rumors that they're already working on a second season. So even though we're only getting 6 episodes, we may not reach a full resolution for this particular story arc. Which, you know what, if they can extend out the characters more fully and take their time with it, I'm okay with that. But if not, I just hope that they fully resolve like everything for this arc, this story arc, with all the characters. So.
Awesome. Now, as we know we have 3 more episodes coming, so we will be doing 3 more of these universe extended episodes. After that, I actually have plans 100% to continue. I really want to continue this after universe extended discussions. JJ, you have 3 more episodes to finish the Thrawn books or finish the High Republic series. I don't care what it is, or it's going to be me and Crab Rock. I'm just so you understand. It's going to be somebody else in here because I want to continue these. I like this piece of this thing, and maybe we'll do it on a different night than Sunday. Like maybe we'll do at a different time if it's easier for people, but I want to continue this series because that's how much I like Star Wars lore. And there's how many Thrawn books that we could be talking about, and there's how many High Republic books we could be talking about.
No idea.
Yeah, I know you don't know. My God, you should be fired. So anyway, the other thing that we're going to do is I think we're going to finish this without Charles is my guess, because I don't think Charles has watched all of them. But what we will be doing is I have to talk to Charles yet, but if he doesn't join us for any of these episodes, I will have Charles do his own universe extended episodes once he's watched all of them. All by himself. Like I'll just sit here and record him with a big face and let him do it all on his own. So
yes, absolutely.
And then he could give a half hour of his thoughts on the whole show. Especially because didn't we get him to admit that he thought it was better than Boba Fett?
Yes, he did.
Just
First
saying.
one. Yep. Can't wait.
Anyway, thank you all for joining us. If you are here because you were here because of our Star Wars X-Wing podcast, we cast every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern to talk about Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game, which is an amazing game if you've never played it before. You can follow us here on Twitch. You can follow us here on YouTube. You can follow us over on Patreon or on any fancy podcast catcher that we have. With that being said, thank you all. Have a good night, and we will see you next week.